Have you ever discovered something about someone you love that completely shattered your perception of them? Something so shocking, so unimaginable, that your mind refuses to accept it, even as the evidence stares you in the face. That's exactly the position Prince Harry found himself in. A position that no royal manual, no trusted advisor, no lifetime of experience could have prepared him for. The world saw Meghan Markle as the perfect modern princess. Charming, beautiful, ambitious, and fearless. But behind the glimmering headlines and glossy magazine covers, a truth was waiting. A truth that would shake Harry to his core. A truth that would leave him questioning everything he thought he knew about his wife. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. It all began with a phone call. A voice on the other end, calm but deliberate, delivered information Harry could barely process. The call came from an unexpected source, someone embedded deep in the heart of Hollywood, someone whose name alone commanded both respect and fear. Weinstein. Yes, the same Weinstein whose shadow has loomed over Tinseltown for decades. The very man who had seen the rise and fall of countless careers, the one whose knowledge of Hollywood's secrets was unparalleled, was now revealing something about Meghan Markle, a side of her the public had never seen. And the revelation? It wasn't flattering. In fact, it was the kind of secret that could obliterate reputations, ruin lives, and destroy families. Harry listened in disbelief, each word from Weinstein hitting him harder than the last. Could it really be true? Was this the Meghan he had known, the woman he had fallen in love with, the mother of his children? Or was there a life he had never been shown, hidden in the shadows of her past, buried under years of carefully curated appearances and Hollywood glamour? The questions swirled in his mind, each one more painful than the next. And yet, the proof was there, in black and white, undeniable and damning. But let's pause for a moment. Why does this matter to you, the viewer? Because what Harry was confronting wasn't just a personal shock. It was a story that exposes the fragility of perception, the tension between public image and private reality, and the lengths people go to protect their secrets. It's a cautionary tale about love, trust, and betrayal, played out on the grandest stage of all, royalty and celebrity combined. The stakes aren't just emotional, they're monumental. The ramifications of these revelations ripple across continents, through tabloids, social media, and the very heart of the British monarchy. Imagine, for a moment, the emotional storm Harry was facing. Here he was, a prince trained to navigate diplomacy, media scrutiny, and centuries of tradition. Yet nothing could prepare him for a revelation that struck at the core of his personal life. Every memory, every shared moment, suddenly seemed fragile, as if the foundation of his marriage was built on a house of cards, poised to collapse at the slightest gust of truth. His love, his loyalty, his judgment, all called into question in an instant. How do you reconcile the person you know with the person the world claims they were before? How do you process betrayal when it comes wrapped in charm, glamour, and undeniable talent? And the timing couldn't have been worse. Harry was already navigating an increasingly complex landscape, a family divided, a public eager to scrutinize his every move, and a marriage under constant media siege. Yet nothing, not even the relentless paparazzi, could have predicted the bombshell that Weinstein was about to drop. This wasn't a rumor, a tabloid exaggeration, or a malicious whisper in the wind. This was a revelation from someone at the center of Hollywood's most guarded secrets. A revelation that demanded Harry's full attention, his deepest contemplation, and his most profound emotional reckoning. Weinstein didn't mince words. He painted a picture of a past that contradicted everything the world had been told. Details emerged that were shocking, sensational, and deeply personal. They hinted at choices, behaviors, and situations that Meghan Markle had allegedly been involved in long before the fairy tale romance, before the palace invitations, before the public adored her as a modern princess. The information was precise, the timing impeccable, and the implications profound. Harry could feel the weight of it pressing down on him, an invisible hand gripping his chest, reminding him that his entire understanding of his life was about to be rewritten. Now, you might be wondering, why would someone like Weinstein, with all his influence, take the risk to reveal this information? The answer is complicated. In Hollywood, Information is power, and secrets are currency. Weinstein's credibility, notoriety, and connections gave him a perspective few could match. And when he spoke about Meghan Markle, it was with the confidence of someone who had seen the rise and fall of countless stars, someone who knew which truths were explosive and which were mundane. His revelations weren't casual gossip. They were strategic, calculated, and designed to shock, and they succeeded. Harry, of course, faced an impossible choice. Confronting Meghan could lead to denial, argument, or heartbreak. Ignoring the truth could mean living in ignorance, clouded by illusions. The stakes were intensely personal, yet undeniably public. Every decision he made had ramifications not just for him and Meghan, but for the monarchy, for the public perception of the royal family, and for the lives of their children. The gravity of the situation was overwhelming, the tension unbearable, and the questions unrelenting. Could love survive this? Could trust be rebuilt after such revelations? Or was this the beginning of the end? The story isn't just about shock and scandal, though. It's about the human experience, the vulnerability, the heartache, the ethical dilemmas we all face when confronted with hard truths. It's about the collision between private history and public persona, between loyalty and self-preservation. And for Harry, this collision was not abstract. It was intensely real, visceral, and unavoidable. Every moment was magnified, every choice scrutinized, and every emotion amplified in a way that only life in the spotlight could produce. But let's not forget the larger context. Meghan Markle was not just any individual. She was a symbol, a brand, a narrative crafted by media, image consultants, and Hollywood storytelling. Her rise was meteoric, her public image immaculate, and her influence undeniable. To hear that there might be a hidden chapter, a controversial past that the public never knew, was not just personal for Harry, it was existential for the story of Meghan Markle herself. The revelation threatened to unravel the carefully curated narrative, leaving fans, critics, and even family members reeling in disbelief. How do you reconcile a persona that seems perfect with a reality that is far from it? How do you make sense of a past that refuses to stay buried? And now, here's the kicker. The details that Weinstein revealed were only the beginning. They hinted at deeper secrets, more explosive stories, and truths that could redefine the public's understanding of Meghan Markle and her relationship with Harry. The shock, the betrayal, and the tension were only going to escalate from here. Every revelation was a thread, and pulling on one thread threatened to unravel the entire tapestry of their lives. Harry's journey into this hidden past was just beginning, and the consequences would be felt not just in private chambers, but across the globe. Harry never imagined that a single phone call could turn his life upside down. Yet here he was, sitting in the quiet of his home, staring at his phone as the words from the other end sank into him like ice water. This wasn't gossip. This wasn't hearsay. This was a revelation so staggering, so unimaginable, that it threatened to fracture everything he had built with Meghan, his trust, his love, and the life they had dreamed of together. The call came unexpectedly. Harry had been preparing for another public appearance, trying to navigate the delicate balance of his duties, his family, and the intense scrutiny of the world. He thought he knew Meghan. He thought he understood her past. But what he was about to hear would force him to question every memory, every promise, every shared moment. The first words hit him like a punch. There's something you need to know about Meghan. Her past is not what you think. At first, he thought it was a joke. Perhaps someone was playing a cruel prank. But then the details came, precise, unflinching, and undeniable. Names, dates, encounters, pieces of a puzzle Harry had never seen before. The woman he loved, the mother of his children, allegedly had a past that would shock not just him, but the entire world. His mind raced. Could it be true? Could the Meghan he knew, the woman he had chosen to marry, really have lived a life so different from the one he had been shown? Harry's emotions collided violently inside him. Anger, confusion, betrayal, love, doubt. Each feeling was a wave crashing against the walls of his heart, leaving him breathless and reeling. He tried to focus, to parse the information logically, but the more he listened, the more the world seemed to tilt beneath his feet. This wasn't a matter of royal protocol or media management. This was personal. This was life-altering. He remembered their early days, the moments that had seemed so pure, so unshakable. Every smile, every tender conversation, every plan for the future now carried an undercurrent of uncertainty. Was he living a fairy tale, or was he trapped in a story with hidden chapters he had never been allowed to read? His thoughts raced, jumping from disbelief to memory to fear. Could trust survive this? Could love endure a revelation so devastating? The shock wasn't just emotional, it was strategic. Harry knew that every decision he made in response to this information would have far-reaching consequences. Ignore it, and he risked being complicit in a lie. Confront Meghan, and he could ignite conflict that might destroy not only their marriage but the delicate balance of their public lives. Every choice carried weight, and the stakes could not have been higher. And then there was the public dimension. Harry understood that secrets rarely stay hidden, especially in their world. What if this information leaked? How would the media portray it? How would the public react? Even with a life in the spotlight, nothing could have prepared him for the intensity of emotions that came with knowing the truth, or the potential fallout that would follow. He tried to process the information logically, but emotion dominated. The mind fights, but the heart often overwhelms reason. He replayed their conversations, their trips, the quiet moments at home. Could all of it have been built on half-truths? Was there ever a version of Meghan that existed only for him? The cognitive dissonance was brutal, leaving him torn between love and incredulity. Harry's world was unraveling in real time. Each passing minute made the reality harder to ignore. The calm, confident man the public saw was now consumed by inner turmoil. He paced, trying to make sense of the situation. He wondered how Meghan would react if confronted. Would she deny it? Would she get angry? Or would there be an explanation that made sense, something that could reconcile the woman he knew with the past he had just uncovered? Every scenario played out in his mind like a movie with no script. He could see the headlines, the betrayal, the scandal, the shockwaves across royal circles and Hollywood alike. The weight of his family legacy, his own reputation, and the lives of his children pressed heavily on him. This wasn't just about personal pain. It was about navigating a minefield that could detonate with a single misstep. He reached out to his closest advisors, those he trusted implicitly, but even they could not provide the comfort or clarity he sought. Their guidance was tactical, measured, focused on damage control and public perception. They could not shield him from the emotional devastation. Harry was on his own, facing a reality that defied easy resolution. And yet, amid the chaos, one thought persisted. He had to know the full truth. He had to understand the life Meghan had lived before him, the choices she had made, and the circumstances that led to the present moment. It was the only way to reconcile the love he felt with the shock he was experiencing. The quest for truth was no longer optional. It was necessary for survival, for clarity, for his own sense of self. Harry's emotions reached a tipping point. The disbelief gave way to a desperate need for answers. He realized that this revelation could not remain in the shadows. He had to confront it, piece by piece, even if the consequences were devastating. Each step forward was fraught with tension, each revelation a potential blow to his heart. The stakes were enormous, the risks unquantifiable, and the emotional cost incalculable. And as he sat there, grappling with the enormity of what he had just learned, a single, terrifying thought crystallized. This was only the beginning. If the past was as complex and explosive as Weinstein claimed, then every memory, every assumption, every belief Harry held about Meghan, their marriage, and even their family, was about to be tested in ways he could never have imagined. The moment Harry heard Weinstein's voice on the line, he knew this was serious. There was a calm authority in it, a chilling confidence that came from years of navigating the hidden corridors of Hollywood power. This wasn't idle gossip. This wasn't a rumor circulating in tabloids. This was a man who had seen everything, the rise and fall of careers, the private scandals of the most celebrated actors, and the darkest secrets that Hollywood desperately tried to bury. And now, he was speaking about Meghan Markle. Harry listened intently as Weinstein began to reveal details he had supposedly kept quiet for years. The tone was deliberate, each word chosen with care. "Harry," he said, "what I'm about to tell you, it's not easy. But you deserve to know. Meghan's past, it's very different from what you think. The first pieces of information alone were enough to make Harry's stomach knot. Weinstein recounted events from Meghan's life that were entirely foreign to him, events that clashed violently with the image of the woman he had come to love. Harry could barely process it. He knew Meghan had been ambitious, yes, and Hollywood wasn't exactly a realm of innocence. But the scale and nature of what he was hearing were shocking, even by his experience of the world. Weinstein spoke of meetings, of encounters, and of choices that Meghan allegedly made long before she ever became a member of the royal family. He painted a picture that was uncomfortable and undeniable. Harry's mind struggled to reconcile the woman he knew with the persona being described. Someone who had navigated a complex, morally ambiguous world. Someone who had engaged in behaviors that were far removed from the public image carefully curated for the world. What struck Harry most was not just the nature of the allegations themselves, but the sheer precision with which Weinstein described them. There was no room for doubt, no ambiguity. Every detail, every name, every timeline was accounted for. It was as if Harry were being shown a private dossier, one compiled with meticulous care, detailing a past that had been deliberately hidden from him. And yet, as much as the information shocked him, there was also a sense of inevitability. In the world Harry inhabited, he had learned to expect secrets. Royals lived lives under constant surveillance, and yet private truths often lingered just out of reach, shielded by layers of protocol, reputation, and carefully managed appearances. Weinstein was simply cutting through those layers, exposing a reality that Harry had been shielded from, whether by love, trust, or deception. Weinstein's revelations weren't delivered casually. There was a strategy to his disclosure, a calculated rhythm designed to elicit a reaction, to force Harry to confront the full scope of what he might have ignored. "You need to understand," he said, "this isn't about judgment. It's about truth. And the truth, Harry, will change everything." Harry's thoughts raced. Could he trust Weinstein? After all, this was a man with a history of manipulation, a man whose reputation was as controversial as it was legendary. Yet the details he provided were precise, verifiable, and disturbingly specific. The consistency of the information lent it credibility that Harry could not ignore, no matter how much he wanted to protect his heart from the pain it was about to endure. As the call continued, Harry felt a cascade of emotions. Shock, disbelief, anger, and a deep, gnawing sadness. The person he thought he knew, the woman he had committed to, the mother of his children, seemed to inhabit a past he had never glimpsed, a life that had been carefully concealed from him. And yet, even in the midst of this emotional storm, Harry understood something crucial. Knowing this information was a responsibility, not a choice. The truth demanded acknowledgement, confrontation, and ultimately, action. Weinstein went further, revealing encounters and decisions that suggested a world Harry had only glimpsed from the outside. Hollywood was a realm of image, influence, and power, and Meghan's navigation of that world had left a trail that was now being illuminated in stark, unflinching detail. Harry struggled with the duality of his feelings: anger at being kept in the dark, fear for the public fallout, and a persistent, almost painful curiosity about the person he had loved so deeply. The conversation was relentless. Each revelation carried emotional weight, challenging Harry's perceptions, testing his judgment, and forcing him to confront a reality that seemed almost impossible to accept. And yet, despite the emotional turbulence, there was also clarity. The patterns, the details, the corroborating accounts, they painted a portrait that was undeniable, compelling, and deeply unsettling. Weinstein's final words on the call lingered in the air long after the line went dead. "Harry," he said, "what you do next is up to you. But understand this, the truth doesn't disappear. It waits, quietly, until someone is ready to face it. And once you do, nothing will ever be the same." Harry was left in stunned silence, the room around him suddenly oppressive in its stillness. Every thought, every memory, every decision seemed to vibrate with new significance. How could he reconcile the Meghan he knew with the revelations he had just heard? How could he process the implications for their family, their public image, and his own understanding of love and loyalty? And then the most terrifying realization hit him. This was only the beginning. Weinstein's disclosures were the tip of the iceberg, a carefully chosen fragment of a past that was far more complex, far more explosive, and far more consequential than Harry had ever imagined. The real challenge was yet to come. The confrontation, the reckoning, and the impossible decisions that would define not just his marriage, but his life, his family, and the world's perception of both him and Meghan. Harry understood, in that moment, that the truth had a power all its own. It demanded attention, it demanded action, and it demanded courage. The journey into Meghan's hidden past was just beginning, and every step forward promised to test him in ways he could not yet imagine. The Hollywood lights were bright, glamorous, and merciless. For many, the city promised fame, fortune, and endless opportunity. For Meghan Markle, it had once been a playground of ambition, dreams, and hidden truths. But beneath the glitz, the glamour, and the carefully curated public image, there were shadows that Harry was only beginning to glimpse. Shadows that no royal protocol, no public adoration, and no fairy tale wedding could erase. Before she became a duchess, before the world adored her as a modern princess, Meghan had lived a life shaped by ambition, risk, and choices that would later become controversial. She had navigated the treacherous corridors of Hollywood, where reputations were fragile, alliances were fleeting, and every step was scrutinized under an unrelenting spotlight. Friends whispered, competitors schemed, and the public only ever saw what was meant to be seen: the charming, charismatic actress who could light up a room. But the reality behind the scenes was far more complicated. Sources close to the industry, including those who had worked with her early in her career, hinted at a young woman who was both ambitious and cunning, someone who understood the power of image and the influence of perception. In Hollywood, image was everything, and Meghan had mastered the art of presenting a version of herself that was polished, poised, and seemingly flawless. Yet beneath that surface, there were choices, encounters, and decisions that Harry had never imagined. Weinstein's revelations began to make more sense in this context. He spoke of moments, roles, and events from Meghan's early years that were largely unknown to the public. Some of these stories painted a picture of a woman navigating morally ambiguous situations, where ambition collided with ethics, and personal desire intersected with the unforgiving demands of an industry built on spectacle. Harry could feel the weight of this history pressing on him, every word adding another layer of complexity to the woman he thought he knew. Harry's mind raced as he tried to reconcile these conflicting images. On one hand, there was Meghan the royal bride, poised, elegant, and adored. On the other, there was Meghan the ambitious actress, making difficult choices to survive and thrive in a cutthroat environment. It was a dichotomy that made his chest tighten, a paradox that left him questioning what he had seen, what he had believed, and what he had perhaps ignored. Hollywood, after all, is a world that rewards charm and punishes vulnerability. Meghan had learned early on how to navigate this reality, how to present the right persona at the right time, and how to leverage every advantage available to her. Friends and former colleagues spoke of her intelligence, her work ethic, and her determination, qualities that had served her well, yet also left her vulnerable to scrutiny and controversy. Every step she took was calculated, every move measured, and every decision had consequences that would ripple far beyond the sets and studios where she began her career. And then there were the rumors, the whispers that circulated quietly but persistently. In Hollywood, secrets are currency, and Meghan's name was no exception. Stories about her past behavior, her relationships, and her career choices had long circulated in private circles, shielded from public view but never entirely hidden. Weinstein, of course, had access to these whispers, these fragments of truth, and he used them to construct a narrative that would leave Harry reeling. Every revelation, every detail, felt like another puzzle piece falling into place, a puzzle that had long been obscured by charm, ambition, and carefully managed appearances. Yet despite the shock and the uncertainty, Harry also felt a complicated sense of understanding. He could see how a young woman navigating a harsh and unforgiving industry might make choices that seemed risky, controversial, or morally ambiguous. He could see the pressure to succeed, the temptation to compromise, and the need to protect oneself in an environment that was both dazzling and merciless. It didn't excuse every action, he knew that, but it provided context. A glimpse into the world Meghan had inhabited before the fairy tale wedding, before the public adored her, before she became the Duchess of Sussex. And then came the details that truly shook him. Encounters and situations that, according to Weinstein, went beyond ambition and into realms that were deeply personal, even compromising. Harry's stomach twisted as he listened, unable to ignore the vividness of the accounts. They were precise, corroborated by multiple sources, and impossible to dismiss as rumor. For the first time, Harry felt the fragility of the world he had built with Meghan, a world of love, trust, and public adoration, start to crack. The challenge, of course, was how to process this information without letting it destroy him completely. Harry had always prided himself on loyalty, on his ability to protect those he loved. But now, loyalty felt complicated. Love felt complicated. Trust felt fragile, like glass poised to shatter under the weight of truth. And every moment spent thinking about Meghan's past only intensified the emotional storm swirling within him. He recalled their conversations, the shared laughter, the private moments of intimacy, the long talks about family and future. Were those memories authentic? Or had they been shaped, consciously or unconsciously, by a person who had learned to navigate the shadows of a world far more complex than he had imagined? The tension between the past and the present was suffocating, leaving Harry questioning not only Meghan, but his own judgment, his own ability to read people, and the very nature of love itself. As the revelations sank deeper, Harry also began to understand the stakes beyond his personal feelings. The public adored Meghan. The media built stories around her as a modern princess, and every royal protocol, every public appearance, every charity event reinforced a carefully constructed image. Yet beneath that image lay a past that, if revealed, could trigger scandal, public outrage, and irreparable damage to the monarchy's reputation. Harry realized that this was more than a personal crisis. It was a situation that could have ramifications far beyond his private life, touching the very heart of an institution centuries in the making. But even as he grappled with these truths, a sense of inevitability emerged. The past, once uncovered, has a way of demanding attention. Secrets, no matter how carefully buried, have a habit of surfacing, and Meghan's Hollywood life, brilliant, ambitious, and controversial, was no exception. Harry knew that the longer he waited to confront this reality, the more powerful it would become. Ignoring it was no longer an option. The truth had its own momentum, and he was caught squarely in its path. And yet, amid the turmoil, Harry could not suppress the core of what he felt: love, hope, and a desperate need to understand. He wanted to believe that the woman he married was the same woman who had walked into his life with grace, warmth, and integrity. But the information he had received was insistent, unyielding, and impossible to ignore. He had a choice to make: confront the past head-on, or risk living in a fragile illusion that could crumble at any moment. What Harry would discover next would push him further into the shadows of Meghan's Hollywood past, revealing layers of complexity, ambition, and scandal that no royal guidebook could prepare him for. And the deeper he delved, the more he realized that nothing, not love, not loyalty, not the public's adoration, could protect him from the revelations waiting just beneath the surface. The moment Harry began to piece together Meghan's past, a chilling realization struck him. There were chapters of her life that had been deliberately hidden, carefully buried, and almost impossible to uncover. Hollywood had taught her to navigate shadows, to manipulate perception, and to protect secrets at all costs. And now, those shadows were coming into sharp focus, exposing encounters and hidden truths that Harry could never have imagined, truths that would challenge everything he thought he knew about the woman he loved. It started with whispers, small, almost imperceptible comments from old colleagues, fleeting mentions of events that seemed innocuous at first. But when combined with Weinstein's revelations, patterns emerged. Harry could see them forming a picture of a life lived in secrecy, of choices made in private that, once exposed, could cause public shockwaves. The woman he had married, poised, articulate, charitable, adored, had a history that was far more complex, far more calculated, and far more controversial than he had ever been shown. Some of the encounters Weinstein described were professional, some personal, but all carried weight. They spoke of Meghan moving through the high-stakes world of Hollywood with a keen awareness of opportunity and consequence. Names were dropped: colleagues, acquaintances, and figures with influence over her career. Details were vivid, corroborated by multiple sources, and impossible to dismiss. Harry could feel the tension in his chest tighten with every revelation, the pressure of this knowledge pressing him to confront it, to make sense of it, to decide what he would do next. And then there were the more personal encounters, situations Harry found almost impossible to process. Weinstein spoke of circumstances that suggested a life filled with calculated risk, with decisions that blurred the line between personal choice and public perception. These were stories that would shock anyone, stories that demanded context, understanding, and, above all, honesty. Harry struggled to reconcile the Meghan he knew, the mother of his children, the woman he trusted implicitly, with the image emerging from these accounts. It wasn't just the nature of the encounters that was striking, it was the precision with which Weinstein relayed them. He had a way of framing information, of presenting facts in a sequence that left no room for doubt. Dates, locations, events, all meticulously detailed, all designed to build a picture that was both compelling and deeply unsettling. Harry felt the weight of it like a physical presence, pressing down, forcing him to confront realities he wasn't sure he was ready to face. Harry's thoughts drifted to his own life, to the love he had believed in, to the shared dreams and plans he had made with Meghan. Could those moments have been influenced, even unconsciously, by the person she had once been? Was there a version of Meghan that existed only in the shadows, a life separate from the one he had married into, a life that now threatened to upend everything? The questions were relentless, each one more painful than the last, each one demanding an answer that Harry was not sure he could handle. Yet, even amid the shock and confusion, there was a gnawing curiosity. Harry wanted to know the full truth, to understand not just the events themselves, but the context, the motivations, the choices that had shaped Meghan's life before him. This was not about judgment, not yet. It was about clarity, understanding, and the emotional integrity required to confront a past that refused to remain hidden. Weinstein's revelations painted a picture of a woman who had mastered the art of discretion, who understood the power of secrecy, and who had navigated both ambition and danger with remarkable skill. It was a portrait that conflicted violently with the public image, creating a tension that left Harry dizzy, both emotionally and intellectually. The duality was stark. The Meghan everyone admired and celebrated, and the Meghan whose past carried shadows, risks, and stories that demanded acknowledgement. The emotional impact on Harry was profound. Every revelation carried layers of personal betrayal, emotional complexity, and moral ambiguity. He felt torn between love and shock, between loyalty and the need to confront the truth. The private anguish was compounded by the public stakes. A royal marriage in the spotlight, a global audience watching, and the knowledge that the fallout would not remain contained. Every choice, every response, every step forward was fraught with potential consequence. And yet, the deeper Harry delved, the more he realized the scope of the story had only begun to reveal itself. Weinstein had provided fragments, glimpses, hints, tantalizing pieces of a puzzle that stretched further than Harry could have imagined. The past was layered, complex, and interconnected, each encounter a thread in a web that now demanded careful unraveling. Harry understood that this was not a journey with a predictable ending. It was a journey of discovery, confrontation, and reckoning, one that would test not only his understanding of Meghan but his own resilience, judgment, and capacity for forgiveness. Harry also began to grapple with the ethical dimension of this knowledge. Secrets have power, and knowledge of them carries responsibility. How should he act? What should he reveal? What could remain private, and what would inevitably spill into the public domain? The questions were relentless, each demanding careful thought, each weighted with emotional and practical consequence. The tension was unbearable, yet unavoidable. In the quiet moments, Harry reflected on the relationship he had with Meghan, the love that had drawn him into her world, and the life they had built together. Could that love survive the revelations he had uncovered? Could trust be restored when the foundation itself seemed unstable? Every memory, every shared experience, now felt like it might have multiple meanings, some hidden, some public, some irretrievably lost in the shadows of the past. And then came the most disquieting thought. Even if he confronted the past, even if he understood it, there was no guarantee that the world would accept it, or that Meghan herself would acknowledge it. Hollywood, media, and public opinion could amplify, distort, and weaponize any revelation, turning private history into public spectacle. Harry understood that the stakes were higher than ever, emotionally, publicly, and personally. But just as he began to process these layers of complexity, a new revelation arrived. A detail, previously hidden, surfaced from Weinstein's files, one that promised to redefine everything Harry thought he knew. It wasn't just an encounter, or a decision, or a choice. It was a thread that could unravel the entire narrative, a truth that was poised to challenge not just Meghan's image, but the very nature of the relationship Harry had believed in so deeply. The moment the truth about Meghan's past began to surface in Harry's mind, he realized that the ramifications extended far beyond their private lives. This wasn't a secret that could remain contained. It had the potential to ripple through the very foundations of the royal family. Every conversation, every decision, and every reaction mattered, because the monarchy existed in a world where perception was reality and appearances were everything. As Harry wrestled with the revelations from Weinstein, he understood that disclosure, even in private, could trigger a chain reaction. The palace was a fortress of tradition, hierarchy, and protocol, but it was also vulnerable to scandal. News of Meghan's past, if it ever reached the wrong ears, could ignite tensions that had been simmering for years. And tensions were already high. Harry had grown increasingly frustrated with the media scrutiny, the public pressure, and the subtle, sometimes overt judgments placed upon Meghan and himself. Now, with this revelation, the stakes were exponentially higher. The first person Harry confided in was his closest aide, someone he trusted implicitly to navigate sensitive matters. The aide listened carefully, weighing every detail, and then quietly warned Harry. If this information gets out, it could change everything. Not just for you, but for the entire royal family. Harry already knew that, but hearing it articulated so bluntly made the danger feel immediate, tangible, unavoidable. The palace was a world of optics, and optics were fragile. One misstep, one leaked detail, could ignite a storm that no royal protocol could contain. Word eventually reached the inner circles of the royal family. Tension was palpable. Meetings were called in private chambers, away from public eyes. The advisors, counselors, and senior staff debated strategies, weighing the emotional, political, and public consequences. Every possible scenario was considered. How would the press react? How would the public perceive Meghan and Harry? How would this affect the monarchy's image, already challenged in recent years? Each question carried enormous weight, and no answer seemed sufficient. Queen Elizabeth's closest confidants reportedly expressed concern over the potential fallout. Tradition demanded discretion, but discretion alone could not erase the weight of scandal. The monarchy had survived centuries of upheaval, but it had never faced a revelation quite like this, one that involved personal history, public image, and the intense scrutiny of a global audience. Harry realized that even the institution he had grown up in, the one he had always trusted to be unshakable, was now navigating uncharted territory. Prince Charles, meanwhile, faced a different dilemma. He understood the delicacy of the situation and the pressure it placed on his son, yet he also recognized the broader implications. The royal family could not ignore these revelations. Doing so would risk accusations of complicity or naivety. But confronting them directly could spark public outrage, media frenzy, and family discord. It was a balancing act of unprecedented complexity, and every decision carried both personal and institutional risk. And then there was Camilla. She reportedly observed the unfolding situation with quiet calculation, understanding the emotional turbulence for Harry while simultaneously evaluating the potential ramifications for the monarchy's reputation. In a world where alliances, influence, and perception were currency, her insights were invaluable. Every word, every gesture, Every response had to be measured. There was no room for misstep. Amid this backdrop, Harry felt a profound sense of isolation. The palace, with all its advisors, staff, and protocols, could offer strategy but not solace. No one could absorb the shock of betrayal, the uncertainty of love, or the emotional turmoil that came with uncovering a hidden past. Harry was forced to confront not only Meghan's history, but also the intricate web of family dynamics, public expectation, and media scrutiny that made every choice heavier, more consequential, and infinitely more complex. Despite the high-stakes deliberations, one thing became clear. The royal family could not pretend the revelations didn't exist. They could manage optics, control information, and prepare responses, but the truth, once revealed, demanded reckoning. And Harry understood that the moment of reckoning would inevitably arrive, whether he, the family, or Meghan were ready for it or not. Rumors began circulating among palace staff. Speculation, inevitably, reached reporters, social media analysts, and loyalists who closely followed every nuance of royal life. Harry watched as the family began navigating the situation, balancing loyalty, strategy, and diplomacy. Meetings, private briefings, and careful deliberations dominated the palace schedule. Advisors debated the best approach: confrontation or discretion, proactive disclosure or careful containment. Each choice could influence public perception, family cohesion, and Harry's personal well-being. The pressure was immense, and the clock was ticking. And yet, amid all this strategizing and discussion, Harry felt a gnawing unease. The palace could plan, advise, and anticipate, but the emotional reality was unmanageable. Love, trust, betrayal, and shock could not be controlled by protocol or strategy. Every royal meeting, every private discussion, every calculated decision only highlighted the tension between public duty and private pain. Harry realized that while the family could manage optics, they could not manage the emotional truth. And that truth was consuming him. As the family reacted behind closed doors, Harry also recognized the growing urgency of the situation. Secrets have a way of surfacing, no matter how carefully they are hidden. And Meghan's past, now illuminated by Weinstein's revelations, was a secret that refused to stay buried. It was only a matter of time before the world would demand answers, and the royal family would have to navigate the fallout in real time. Every strategy, every precaution, every decision was a temporary shield against an inevitable storm. And then the most unnerving thought struck Harry. The past was not finished revealing itself. The palace could react, the advisors could strategize, and the media could speculate, but there were still layers of truth waiting to emerge. Layers that could challenge perceptions, disrupt carefully maintained images, and ignite controversy on a scale the monarchy had not seen in decades. The revelations were just beginning, and Harry realized that what came next would force choices, confrontations, and reckonings that could alter his life, Meghan's life, and the royal family forever. The world outside the palace walls waited impatiently, unaware that a storm was quietly brewing behind closed doors. For Harry, the revelations about Meghan's past weren't just a private crisis. They were the prelude to a public spectacle that could engulf them both. In the age of social media, relentless 24-hour news cycles, and an insatiable appetite for scandal, the royal family was perpetually on display, and secrets, no matter how carefully guarded, rarely stayed hidden for long. It began subtly at first, a tweet here, a whisper in the tabloids there. Rumors of Meghan's past circulated online, amplified by speculation, leaked tidbits, and the instinctive hunger for sensational stories. Harry watched in disbelief as social media accounts exploded with conjecture, as news outlets scrambled to verify claims, and as every detail, real, exaggerated, or imagined, was dissected under the unforgiving lens of public scrutiny. The intensity was overwhelming, the velocity unstoppable. Every headline, every article, every viral post carried the potential to destabilize not just Meghan's public image but the entire monarchy. Harry could feel the pressure mounting. The media was not content with mere speculation. It wanted drama, controversy, and conflict. And in the age of instantaneous reporting, there was no room for careful explanation or nuance. Every revelation, no matter how small, could trigger a cascade of public outrage and scandal. Harry understood the stakes immediately. The palace could manage official statements, coordinate press releases, and attempt to contain the narrative, but the online world operated on a different rhythm. A rhythm of immediacy, amplification, and relentless commentary. The scrutiny was unforgiving, the commentary unrelenting, and the consequences potentially catastrophic. Every moment spent in private deliberation risked being overtaken by public perception, and every misstep could be magnified into a headline that would dominate the global news cycle. Friends and advisors warned Harry of the potential fallout. "Once this reaches the public, there's no going back," one aide said, his voice grave. "The media will spin it, social platforms will erupt, and every rumor will become a headline." Harry nodded, but internalized fear mingled with anger, confusion, and a deep sense of responsibility. He had married Meghan because he believed in her. He had trusted her. And now, faced with revelations from Weinstein, he was forced to consider how the world might perceive the woman he loved, and what that perception might do to the family, to their lives, and to their legacy. The frenzy escalated quickly. Within hours, anonymous sources began claiming knowledge of Meghan's past. Tabloid columns speculated about her Hollywood life, and social media became a theater of outrage, judgment, and moral posturing. Every rumor, true or false, gained traction. Fans and critics alike weighed in, dissecting every detail, every photograph, every old interview. The palace understood that controlling the narrative was nearly impossible. Every statement risked being misinterpreted, every response scrutinized, every silence questioned. Harry felt the crushing weight of expectation. As a member of the royal family, he had to navigate the storm with grace, composure, and strategy. Yet he was simultaneously grappling with intense personal emotions: betrayal, shock, confusion, and fear for the future. The public saw the polished facade, the composed prince, the dignified figure. But inside, Harry was confronting truths that threatened to unravel the life he had built. The frenzy wasn't limited to traditional media. Social platforms acted as accelerants, spreading information, speculation, and commentary at lightning speed. Memes, video clips, and viral threads dissected Meghan's past, often in cruel and exaggerated ways. Public opinion split sharply. Some defended her, some condemned her, and some simply gawked in morbid fascination. Harry realized that no matter what he did, the court of public opinion would have its say, often with devastating impact. Pressure from the media also reached Meghan directly. She received calls, texts, and messages from reporters, old colleagues, and industry contacts. Every interaction reminded her that the past she had carefully navigated for years was now under relentless scrutiny. The stress was immense. Every decision she made could be misinterpreted, every denial could fuel suspicion, and every silence could be seen as admission. Harry watched her struggle, torn between empathy and his own shock. He knew the emotional toll would be enormous. At the palace, advisors debated strategies for managing the media onslaught. Some recommended proactive disclosure, framing the narrative on their terms. Others urged caution, fearing that acknowledgement would only feed the frenzy. Harry listened, absorbed every opinion, and weighed the emotional and strategic consequences. The tension was unbearable. Every option carried risk. Every path forward seemed fraught with peril. Amid the chaos, Harry noticed a disturbing pattern. The public's attention wasn't focused solely on the truth. It was fixated on scandal, drama, and spectacle. Facts were less important than the story, nuance was irrelevant, and moral judgment ruled supreme. Harry understood that even if Meghan's past was contextualized, even if explanations were offered, the frenzy would not subside until it had exhausted itself. It was a lesson in the brutal power of perception, and Harry felt the weight of it like a physical blow. Yet, in the midst of the frenzy, Harry also recognized an opportunity, the chance to assert control, to confront the narrative, and to protect the integrity of the family. He realized that avoidance or denial would only exacerbate the situation. The media would not wait, and the public's hunger for drama would not be satiated without action. Harry began formulating strategies, considering interviews, statements, and private briefings that could shape perception while protecting the dignity of those involved. Even so, the pressure was relentless. Every day brought new speculation, new rumors, and new scrutiny. Harry felt trapped between personal loyalty and public responsibility, between love and shock, between private emotion and the unyielding glare of the global spotlight. Every choice was measured, every statement weighed, every action fraught with potential consequence. The intensity was exhausting, emotionally and mentally, and Harry understood that the storm would not abate quickly. And then came the most unnerving realization. The media frenzy was only the beginning. It was a prelude to deeper revelations, more private truths, and further confrontations that would test Harry, Meghan, and the royal family in unprecedented ways. Every headline, every viral post, every public reaction was a reminder that secrets have a way of surfacing, and that the past, no matter how carefully managed, has a power all its own. The moment Harry realized the depth and detail of Weinstein's revelations, he knew that confrontation was inevitable. Secrets, no matter how carefully hidden, have a way of surfacing at the worst possible time. And now, with the pressure of the palace, the public, and the media mounting, the confrontation with Meghan was no longer a choice. It was a necessity. The questions had to be asked. The truth had to be faced. And for Harry, this was perhaps the most emotionally exhausting step yet. He found Meghan in their private quarters, her posture poised but weary. The tension in the air was palpable. Every glance, every movement, every measured word carried layers of unspoken anxiety. Harry's mind raced as he tried to find the right words. Words that could elicit honesty without causing irreparable harm. Words that could reveal the truth without destroying what they had built together. Yet he knew that no preparation could fully brace him for what was about to unfold. "Meghan," he began, his voice steady but weighted with emotion. "There's something we need to talk about. I've learned things about your past. Things I didn't know." The words hung in the air, heavy, undeniable. Meghan's expression shifted subtly, a flicker of surprise, perhaps apprehension, maybe even recognition that the past she had carefully navigated was finally catching up. Harry continued, carefully detailing the information he had received from Weinstein. He spoke not as a judge, but as a husband trying to understand, trying to reconcile the woman he loved with the stories that now surrounded her. Each revelation was met with a mixture of silence, denial, and defensive explanations. Meghan's responses were calculated, precise, yet tinged with the tension of someone caught between truth, protection, and public image. For Harry, the confrontation was both personal and surreal. Every revelation challenged his understanding of trust, love, and loyalty. He recalled their shared moments, the laughter, the plans, the intimate conversations, and wondered how much of that had been shaped by the persona Meghan had cultivated versus the woman described in the files and revelations. The emotional toll was immense, leaving Harry exhausted, conflicted, and uncertain. Yet amid the tension, there were moments of clarity. Harry realized that confrontation was not about accusation, but about understanding. He wanted to know not just what had happened, but why. He needed to comprehend the choices Meghan had made, the circumstances that had shaped her decisions, and the forces that had compelled her to navigate a world so different from the one he knew. This confrontation was about uncovering truth, and truth, he understood, often comes in uncomfortable, messy, and complicated forms. Meghan's responses were revealing, even when carefully crafted. She acknowledged some aspects, denied others, and framed certain actions in the context of survival, ambition, and personal necessity. Harry listened, absorbing the complexity of her words, weighing their sincerity against the evidence presented by Weinstein. Every nuance mattered. Every pause, every inflection, every shift in tone offered insight into the layers of her past, the intentions behind her actions, and the woman she had become. The conversation escalated, moving from careful explanation to emotional confrontation. Harry's voice, usually measured, carried frustration, confusion, and hurt. Meghan's replies blended defensiveness with attempts at explanation, creating a tense back and forth that exposed the raw emotional core of their relationship. It was a moment of vulnerability and revelation, a test of trust and resilience. and a collision of past and present that neither could ignore. And then came the most challenging question. How could they move forward? Harry realized that understanding the past was only the first step. They had to confront the consequences for their marriage, for their family, and for the public image that had been carefully constructed over years. Could trust be rebuilt? Could love survive when foundational truths were challenged? Every answer seemed incomplete, every potential path fraught with uncertainty. As the confrontation continued, Harry felt a growing sense of urgency. The palace, the media, and the public would not wait. The truth, once surfaced, demanded acknowledgement. The confrontation with Meghan was not just about personal understanding. It was about preparation, strategy, and emotional readiness for the fallout that was already beginning to take shape outside their private world. Meghan's composure, however, remained formidable. She articulated her perspective with precision, framing her past in ways that highlighted ambition, resilience, and the challenges of navigating a demanding industry. Yet even as she spoke, Harry could sense the tension, the fear, and the awareness that these revelations could alter everything. Not just their relationship, but their lives, their public perception, and the intricate dynamics of the royal family. The conversation reached a critical point when Harry asked the question that weighed heaviest on his heart. Could he trust her fully, knowing what he now knew? The silence that followed was thick, suffocating, and telling. Meghan's eyes revealed a mixture of defiance, vulnerability, and recognition of the enormity of the moment. The emotional stakes were immense, leaving Harry in a state of suspended judgment, unsure of how to reconcile love with revelation, trust with evidence, and hope with fear. And just when Harry thought he had reached some semblance of clarity, Weinstein's files revealed yet another layer. Encounters, decisions, and associations that went beyond the narratives they had discussed. It was a detail so explosive, so unexpected, that it threatened to overturn the fragile understanding they had just begun to construct. The confrontation, it seemed, was far from over. Harry understood, with chilling clarity, that Meghan's past was not a single chapter but a series of interwoven narratives, each with implications for their marriage, their family, and their public lives. Every revelation carried weight, every truth demanded acknowledgement, and every response required careful consideration. The confrontation was only the beginning, a doorway into a world of complexity, scandal, and emotional turbulence that neither of them could fully control. The confrontation with Meghan had left Harry emotionally drained, yet it also marked the point of no return. Secrets that had once been buried, carefully hidden, and protected were now out in the open between them. But the private confrontation was only the beginning. The fallout was about to spill into every corner of their lives, from the palace corridors to the relentless glare of global media. Harry knew that nothing would ever be the same. The first signs of fallout were subtle but unmistakable. Palace staff moved with a new sense of urgency, whispers of speculation circulating in hushed tones behind closed doors. Advisors and counselors convened impromptu meetings, evaluating how the revelations might affect not only Harry and Meghan but the royal family at large. The stakes were enormous. Every decision carried implications for public perception, media scrutiny, and the delicate balance of royal protocol. Nothing could be left to chance. Meanwhile, Harry and Meghan faced the immediate emotional fallout. Trust, already strained, now required constant negotiation. Harry wrestled with his own feelings. Shock, confusion, and a sense of betrayal, while trying to reconcile them with the woman he had loved and married. Meghan, for her part, navigated the delicate task of defending herself, contextualizing her past, and maintaining composure amid the rising storm. Every interaction between them became a high-wire act, balancing personal emotion with public consequence. The media, of course, sensed the change immediately. Rumors of a private confrontation leaked, setting off a wildfire of speculation. Headlines ranged from sympathetic to scandalous, each one designed to provoke reaction and capture attention. Social media amplified the frenzy, with viral threads dissecting past interviews, old photographs, and every public appearance Meghan had made. The court of public opinion became an unrelenting force, each tweet and comment adding weight to the pressure Harry already felt. Palace advisors debated strategies to mitigate the damage. Some suggested proactive disclosure, framing Meghan's past as a story of resilience and ambition. Others recommended careful containment, emphasizing privacy and discretion. Every option carried risk. Every choice could shape public perception, influence royal protocol, and alter the trajectory of Harry and Meghan's lives. The pressure was suffocating. Public reactions were polarized. Some sympathized with Meghan, viewing her past as a series of challenging circumstances navigated with intelligence and strength. Others condemned her, seizing on revelations to question her character, motivations, and suitability for royal life. Harry watched the discourse unfold with a mix of frustration and helplessness. The media frenzy was beyond his control, and every headline, every viral post, seemed to escalate the situation further. Amid this chaos, Harry realized the fallout was not just public, but deeply personal. Family dynamics shifted as senior royals absorbed the impact of the revelations. Discussions that once revolved around protocol and diplomacy now included questions of loyalty, protection, and damage control. Trust within the family was tested, with differing opinions emerging on how to handle the situation. Harry understood that even as he tried to navigate his own emotions, he was also entangled in a web of institutional expectations and family obligations. Financial implications began to surface as well. Advisors assessed potential threats to royal engagements, endorsements, and charitable partnerships. Public perception had a direct influence on these arrangements, and any scandal involving Meghan could trigger economic consequences for the monarchy. Every detail mattered. Every rumor could affect decisions, and every action taken by Harry or Meghan would be scrutinized in light of both personal and institutional impact. The emotional fallout within Harry and Meghan's household was intense. Tension permeated private conversations, turning casual interactions into charged exchanges. Moments that once offered comfort now carried underlying scrutiny, each word carefully weighed.